Hello, this is the formal introduction part of the program. My name is Georgia Court. I'm the proprietor at Bookstore One, Sarasota. And I'm happy to have all of you on this call. I think it should be interesting. I just finished reading the book and I know the book is interesting, so we will see what happens tonight. What's going to happen is that our author, Monte Burke, who I'll introduce in a minute, is going to speak for 20 minutes or so about his book, I assume about his book, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. And this has been set up so that you can unmute yourselves because we're going to have a small group tonight. Actually, it looks like all but maybe one or two people are already here. And that way you can have a discussion with the author. And I think that should work pretty well. If you don't have his book, by the way, his book is called Lords of the Fly. There it is right there. And it's for sale at Bookstore One Sarasota. And in the chat, there is a link to purchase the book. And I will put it in again because sometimes I understand those chat links kind of disappear. So as we're going, I'm going to disappear after the introduction and come back at the end for the Q&A. And I'll re-add that, the link to purchase the book. Another thing is that if you're not comfortable coming in on the Q&A because you don't want to be seen or you don't want to speak on air, please feel free to put the questions in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and monitor that as the evening goes on. So let me introduce our wonderful speaker. Monte Burke is the author of the New York Times bestseller, Saban, The Making of a Coach, a biography of an Alabama head coach, Nick Saban. And did I pronounce that correctly?
You did, Saban, yep.
Okay. He is also the author of Fourth and Goal, One Man's Quest to Recapture His Dream, which won an Axiom Award for biography, and Sow Belly, the obsessive quest for the world record largemouth bass, which was named one of the best books of the year by Sports Illustrated and Amazon. And it was chosen for Barnes & Noble's Discover Great New Writers program. After a 14-year stint as a reporter, staff writer, and editor at Forbes, he's now a contributing editor at the magazine. He's also a contributing editor at Garden & Gun and The Drake. I give you Monte Burke, and I will see you again in a few minutes. Enjoy.
Thank you, Georgia. And thanks you guys for all showing up. I know there's not a whole lot of us here, but that's okay. For one of my previous books, I went to a bookstore in Oxford, Mississippi, and 250 people showed up. It was my first stop on a book tour, and I was totally jazzed. I was like, man, these things are awesome. I can't believe how great they are and how many people show up. And then the next day I drove to Atlanta in a really big bookstore there, and two people showed up, one of whom was my brother. So I just appreciate it when anybody shows up to these things. It's just wonderful that you would take your time out of your day to do this. So I want to talk just a little bit about Lords of the Fly, which I conveniently have here on the back of my bookshelf here. I'll give you a quick kind of overview of the book. So the sort of heart of the book, the centerpiece of the book, was what I think you could call the apex moment of fly fishing, and maybe the apex moment of fishing. It was a period in the late 1970s and the early 80s when the world's greatest fly anglers, the world's greatest fly guides, all came to the same spot, all were in the same place, all at the same time, all with the same goal, which was to break the world record for the tarpon on a fly rod. And this place was Homosassa, which is not too far from Sarasota. It's about 70 miles north of Tampa, if that gives you some indication. And so, you know, if you're a fishing geek like me, this was this incredible moment. It was, I guess, akin to, let's say you could take Tiger, Jack Nicklaus, Walter Hagen, Ben Hogan, and Tom Watson and take them all in their primes, give them all the same equipment, and have them go to Augusta National and play at the same time for 5 years in a row. That's kind of how I think that would be the golf equivalent of what went on in Homosassa. And so you had people like Lefty Kreh, who was probably the most famous fly fisherman of all time, was there. The baseball player Ted Williams, who was at one point, I think in his career was the best hitter, the best fighter pilot, and the best fly fisherman in the world. He was there. Stu Apt was there, who's a legend in this game. Flip Pallett, Chico Fernandez, Billy Pate. It just, the list kind of goes on and on and on. It's sort of like the all-star group of fly fishermen were all there. So, that really, really intrigued me. And it was a crazy time. There was fierce competition on the water. The record was broken just about every year as the years went on. What spilled over into the off the water shenanigans was fairly interesting to me too. There were lots of vices were swept into the tide. I'll just leave it at that. There was a lot of shenanigans that went on. But what was interesting to me too was, as I got kind of further in the reporting of this, is sort of what led up to that moment, that apex moment, and then kind of what came out of it. So in terms of what led up to it, I mean, there is this sort of like weird string that starts with the Macedonians in the 17th century being the first people to cast a fly rod for trout. And then the British get really into fly fishing. They export it to the United States like they exported so many other things. Of course, Americans kind of made it their own, did their own thing, and then they ventured into the salt first in the Northeast, and then all of a sudden people started going down to Florida. And it was this kind of cool evolution that took place. And, tarpon kind of became, even early on, was sort of the apex species to target with a fly rod. And I'll get into kind of why that is in a minute. But, within the book, I go back to the Macedonians. I don't spend too much time there, but we quickly get up to like the early 70s when you have four men, Flip Pallett, Chico Fernandez, who were both very famous fly fishermen, and a man named Norman Duncan and a man named John Emery, who called themselves the Four Musketeers. And they were these young fly fishing geeks. They were totally obsessed with it, and particularly obsessed with tarpon. They were all at the University of Miami. They used to practice their fly casting under the lights at night after night school. They would steal their parents' car, at 12 o'clock at night, and drive down from Miami to Key West and fish all night, and then be back in the morning so their parents wouldn't even know their cars were gone. They were just totally into it. And they were breaking new ground, with almost every cast they made. They were learning how to try to catch these tarpon, which are these huge mammoth beasts, on fly equipment. So their innovations in fly rods, fly reels, and fly lines made the sport more accessible. And then, so the book, the kind of camera of the book, I guess you could say, after that moves down to Key West, where you have the artists sort of take over the sport. You have Thomas LeGuane, the great novelist. You have Jim Harrison, also a great novelist, of course. Richard Brautigan, the poet. Russell Chatham, the painter. Jimmy Buffett shows up for a little while. So you sort of have this wild scene where these artists are sort of performing their art in a weird way, trying to catch this fish, which is sort of impossible to explain, which really is kind of art, right? Just trying to explain the impossible to explain. And they too are having a great time off the water. I mean, they've got all kinds of shenanigans going on down there in Key West. And these artists kind of come together. They even make a movie while they're down there. This art is reflected in Tom LeGuane's writing, certainly Jim Harrison's writing as well. Russell Chatham became a great landscape painter in Montana. You could certainly see the influence of the sky in Key West and some of those paintings he had in Montana. And so what these artists did was kind of make the sport cool. As I was kind of looking into that, it reminded me of the first neighborhood I lived in New York City, which was Soho. Now, when I moved there, it was sort of in transition, but Soho was a warehousey, rundown kind of place that the artists inhabited because it was cheap. And you had these huge lofts with these tall ceilings, and they could kind of do their art in there. And when the artists all flocked there, they would show their work there, and they just became kind of known as an artist spot, which of course made it cool. And then once a neighborhood in New York City becomes cool, inevitably you get hedge funders, famous people, lawyers, the real estate sharks come in there, and they sort of take over the neighborhood. And what happens kind of in this timeline, in this tarpon timeline, is sometime in the late 70s, that happens in the tarpon world as well. You've got the artists make it very, very cool. All of a sudden, we shift the camera up to Homosassa. and where you've got, you know, a bunch of, frankly, fairly rich guys who come in and make it competitive. They're not worried about the art of the sport at all. They just want to break the world record. You've got a bunch of juniors there. You've got Al Fluger Jr., Tom Evans Jr., Billy Pate Jr., which gives you some idea of the sort of the kind of folks you're dealing with there. And so, you know, that becomes kind of the centerpiece of the book. And then again, you know, I go on to talk about kind of what happened after that kind of seminal moment in fly fishing, sort of what the environmental degradation that led Homosassa to become once sort of the Yankee Stadium of the tarpon world, and now just a degraded shell of its former self. There are many fewer tarpon that show up. The water quality is terrible. But also looking at tarpon fishing as a sport and how it's probably, I think you could say actually definitely more popular now than it's ever been. I mean, there's kind of a natural evolution when it comes to fly fishermen and fishermen. You sort of start with, you know, bobbers and worms and catching small freshwater fish, and then you want to catch bigger fish, and then really at the apex there is the tarpon. But when I think about, when I'm asked about sort of what the book's about, you know, I mean, there are a lot of fishing stories in there for sure. Hopefully not too many, but really I think what the book's about is about obsession. And actually, when I look back at all of my books that I've written, you know, Fourth and Goal was about an obsessed football coach. Nick Saban at Alabama might be the most obsessed football coach in the world. Sort of definitely all of my books and most of my magazine writing has to do with obsession and people who are obsessed. And I don't know, it attracts me somehow. I think it's so interesting. I mean, when you look at these individual obsessions, when you look at, you know, if I were to walk down the street here in Brooklyn and be like, you know, there's some guys who try to catch the world record tarpon on a fly, they'd be like, so, I mean, what? You know, every little obsession kind of looks silly to other people, I feel like. And yet there are millions of them, of these little niche obsessions. And in reality, I think they kind of make the world go round. You know, I think they are what motivate people to get up out of bed every morning and you know, motivate people to kind of extend themselves. And so that's always really intrigued me. In fact, one of my favorite books that about obsession is Susan Orlean's book, The Orchid Thief, about a guy who's obsessed with rare orchids. And, you know, to many of us, that seemed like kind of a silly thing to be obsessed about, but it's what drove him. But of course, obsessions have a dark side as well. I mean, Sylvia Plath wrote in her journal, I'm going to read it up here to make sure I get it right. She said, "I desire the things which will destroy me in the end," which I think is a warning. I mean, of course, obsession has a dark side too. It has, you know, it leads people to do horrible things. It leads people to destroy their lives and the lives of others. And within Lords of the Fly, I think you also see there's a real dark underbelly to this obsession. You see, you know, a ton of marriages broken, a lot of lives kind of broken. I mean, a couple people die. There's some drug addiction. I mean, there's some sort of crazy stuff that happens around this obsession. So much so that the regulars who went to Homosassa started calling it Homo Smasha, because it smashed so many lives. And the thing about tarpon really is that they're a really easy thing to become obsessed about. I don't know how many of you have ever been or tarpon fishing or seen a tarpon. They are magnificently beautiful creatures. You know, they're silver. They have these silver plated, you know, scales on them. They are huge. They can grow up to 300 pounds. They're 6-7 feet long. They're always in better shape than anyone who's pursuing them. They are, you know, denizens of the very deep ocean, of which we know nothing about. We know more about the moon than we know about the deepest part of the ocean, and that's where they spend most of their lives. But they do come to shallow water, usually to migrate, to spawn, which is so cool that we can connect with them there. And in a way, in particular with a fly rod and a fly, communicate with them in a way. And that I've always just loved that we kind of can intersect with a cool migration like that. And they are, you know, they're one of the few species in the hunting and fishing world that fights back. When you hook a smaller fish like a salmon or a trout, basically you hook it and you sort of hold your fly rod up, and the fly rod does most of the work and kind of let the fish run, and then you reel it in. With a tarpon, you actually have to fight the thing. you've got a 5-ounce graphite rod, and you're pulling as hard as you can on a 150-pound animal that wants nothing to do with you. It's scooting off as fast as you can. I'll never forget the very first tarpon I ever hooked and landed. I cast it out. I saw the fish, cast it out, did one pull. The pull of a tarpon is one of the most amazing things too. It's as if you hooked an 18-wheeler. It's going the other way, 75 miles an hour. It is just insane. The next thing I know, I'm still looking this way out the boat like that, and a fish jumps behind here. And I said, hey, I told my guide, I said, hey, you see that fish jump right there? He goes, that's your fish. I was like, what? So my line was all the way around. It was this amazing thing. It took me 2 hours to reel the thing in. My knees, I had my knees against the casting platform, and they were rubbed, they were bleeding. I had sweated through my shirt and my pants completely. I felt like I was going to throw up. I was so dehydrated. My hand was in this kind of curl like this that it took me 5 minutes after fighting the fish to get it uncurled. And, so when we finally let the fish go, we kind of patted on the head and it zoomed off. And I'll never forget, sort of almost feeling retching over the side of the boat, but thinking to myself, damn, I can't wait to do that again. It was just an exhilarating thing. So they're a very easy fish to become obsessed about, I think. There's I think in the book too, there's a little bit of a cautionary tale, not only with the taking obsessions too far, but there's Homosassa becomes kind of a bleak place after this apex moment. It kind of gradually drops off. The number of fish coming in is not the same. It becomes too crowded. The competition gets kind of ugly. I won't spoil it, but there's a whole chapter on a gangster who shows up. He's only got the pointer and his thumb of one hand. And he sort of, as gangsters do, he sort of tries to take control of the whole place, and it becomes kind of an ugly place. But, environmentally, I think there's a real cautionary tale there too about the way that Florida manages its resources, and how important. I mean, there's those fish that used to come there in the tens of thousands now show up in the hundreds, and that's kind of to me a little bit of a canary in a coal mine kind of thing. We should pay attention to that. That's not and not just as sportsmen. I think we all need to kind of pay attention to that that environmental degradation. Another thing people ask me a lot about is, why I did this book. So the book previous to this one I just done was about Nick Saban. And, there's a bigger audience for football coaches, we'll put it that way. My agent and the editors at different publishers weren't exactly all that pumped up about this book. Or about this idea, but I got the idea from Steve Huff, who's a guide who shows up in the book quite a bit, and he would talk about these stories at Homosassa. He would mention just the word Homosassa always sounded so poetic and kind of enchanting to me. I always loved that word. And then I met a couple of the people who started tell me more about Homosassa. I hung out with a man named Andy Mill, who's former U.S. ski team racer, the ex-husband of Chris Everett, and a great tarpon fisherman who knows about all the lore, and he would tell me all about Homosassa. And it was in 2018, I think Andy called me, and he said, you have to do a book about Homosassa. You just have to do it. Someone's got to capture this moment. And I was not quite sold, but he said, here's a phone number, call this guy, Tom Evans. And so I called this number, and this gruff voice answered, and it was Tom Evans, who lived in Vermont. So I drove up to go see him. Tom is, at this point in his life, he's 82 years old. He is basically immobile, pretty much a shut-in. He can stand. He's had numerous botched back surgeries. Thus, he's gained a ton of weight. He can't really walk. He can stand for like a minute or two. He was there very early on. He was the first kind of, first fisherman really to fish for records in Homosassa there in early in 1977, 1976. He's 82 years old. He still goes there every year in search of, the world record fish. Even as the fishery is degraded, he still goes there. There was a real poignancy to that. Tom is a interesting guy. He's not the most introspective fellow in the world. He's very gruff. I think I described in the book as a bull who is always pleased to find himself in a china shop. But he's a great character. He leads off the book, and we end the book with Tom, and he shows up at various points within the book. So kind of once I talked to Tom, I really got the bug. And I think, you know, it's easy as a writer to do what you think other people think you should do. If it's commercial, you know, something might be more commercial or something might, you know, but I think if you get a story that hooks you, I mean, really gut hooks you, and you feel like you really got to tell it, then you have to do it. I had to get this out of my system just so I could do the next book. And so, you know, agent and publishers got happier once they saw the book. You know, it's, I've had in the weird kind of conundrum where you know, kind of happy, good and bad thing that actually 2 editions have sold out, and we've been waiting for the 3rd edition now. Actually, George's Bookstore is one of the few places that has them right now. They should be restocked at the end of the week in other spots, but get them from her. And, you know, I mean, it's just been, it's been a great experience. I mean, the Saban book was a much more of a national thing. You know, went on ESPN and interviewed by all these people about this big time figure or whatever. This book has been incredibly personal. I've never gotten, for anything I've ever written, I've never gotten more emails, more personal emails and DMs and Facebook messages and stuff like that. I mean, it's really unbelievable. I mean, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that tarpon anglers are kind of a tribe, but I've gotten a lot from people who aren't tarpon anglers. And it, you know, it's the best thing. It's such a bizarrely lonely craft sometimes. I mean, the reporting of a book is not lonely. You have to be this incredible extrovert because you've got to elicit all of this information from people. But then when you get to the writing and the editing, and then right before the book is supposed to come out, it can be very lonely, especially right before the book comes out, because you have no idea whether it's good and you have no idea whether people are going to read it. So it has been such a wonderful thing to have people send in these you know, nice emails. So I think that's about all I got. I would love to have, if you guys have any questions, anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions about this book or about anything. If you want to ask me about cod fishing in Alaska, can't answer that, but there's lots of things I can't answer.
Any questions?
It looks like, is there a
Up there?
chat question there? Oh, no, it's you.
No,
Okay.
I don't see a chat question.
I have a question. So hi, my name is Robin Horenzen.
Hey,
I live in Sarasota now. I'm actually from Vermont originally.
Oh, cool.
I grew up in Middlebury for most of my childhood.
Yeah,
I know you went to Middlebury.
Yeah.
Middlebury College. Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife, you know, she grew up in Middlebury. Her cousin went to Middlebury College. Her uncle went to Middlebury College. Like I have close ties to Middlebury.
Weird.
I learned how to fly fish when I was about 18. I'm 28 now. I learned how to freshwater fly fish. First in Montana. My now father-in-law taught me how to fly fish out there, and I got the bug. I mean, I couldn't stop. You know, I was like, I owned plenty of spinning gear, but like I just kind of was like, that's it. And I came down to Florida here 5 years ago, and I was like, I need to figure out this saltwater fly thing, you know? And I didn't really have a lot of mentors or any friends who were really into it the way I was. And now I consider myself a little obsessed, but I also consider myself to be an amateur saltwater fly fisherman. And I have a flats boat. I have a little 16-foot skiff, and I love pulling around, and I love hitting the mangroves. And for me, you know, I discovered the Everglades this year, and mainly Chokoloskee. And I've been down there twice this year already. I'm going back down in January. I'm going to go back down in April. To me, that is the modern day Homosassa for me, you know, like that's truly one of the untouched places in the world. But first time I went down there, I fished with this guide named Bill Faulkner, who's a pretty prominent guy down there, and just to go fish for snook and that kind of thing. But I brought my boat, and so I went with my buddy. We're like, we're gonna go fish on my boat for a day, and then we're gonna fish with the guide for the second day, and then we'll go home. So we fished on my boat, and we did all right. Like we caught nice snook and one nice redfish, and a bunch of other stuff, and it was a lot of fun, and it really opened my eyes to like what fly fishing. To be honest, Sarasota fly fishing is tough. There's a lot of development around here, and there's not a lot of like untouched sort of line, mangrove lines and land. But I guess my question is, so in your book, the way you kind of describe some of these people who really pursued tarpon in the early days,
Yep.
if they're on the bow, like they were pretty successful people who had a pretty, had disposable income and had the resources and the ability to kind of go spend 60 days in the water, spend 14 days not catching a fish, whatever it may be.
Right.
And that's tough for someone like me. Like, I'm not a tarpon fisherman. I have tarpon fished before. I've caught one on spinning tackle, never caught one on a fly. But it's certainly next up for me for sure. But this was a question that came up on Andy Mills' podcast recently too. And I wanted to pose it to you, which is, I mean, these guides and these people who protect these waters and consider them to be their own, and like their stomping grounds, they hold it so personally and they get so defensive. And even like, I brought up the Everglades because like, I told my guide Bill, like, oh yeah, we fished before we fished with you, and this is our first time down here. And he was polite about it, respectful, but I could kind of tell he was like, what the hell are you doing down here in my spot,
right.
Like fishing my waters, And there were plenty of people who were plenty warm and welcoming to us. But the point is like, that is kind of, if you're not paying for a guide, if you don't have the money to be on the bow of a guide boat, and if you can't really put in that time, I mean, where are the venues for us sort of more amateur fishermen, people who don't have the disposable income, the time, like I work 9 to 5, 5 days a week. So like what can guides do to make this fishery more accessible for people who don't have that kind of those kind of resources? And also, what can fishermen do, like anglers who aren't as accustomed to the sport, maybe accustomed to the area that they're pursuing fish in? What can they do to make it more welcoming for them? You know what I mean? Like, how does it become something that can be shared amongst those who want to pursue this, but kind of want to do it on their own, those DIYers, And how do you talk to guides who feel so defensive about it and really get aggressive about it? I mean, not just guys like Dave Mangum or any of these guides, who are kind of notoriously combative about newcomers in the area.
It seems to me the Tarpon World, it's a great question. The Tarpon World kind of breeds these type of hyper secretive and very kind of, macho posturing, feudish kind of deals. I like to do it myself too. I love fishing with Steve Huff and some of the guys. If David Mangum was fun to fish with too, but if I could do it myself, I would love to do it too. I mean, guides should certainly, should be more welcoming, because the more people that fish for tarpon, the more people there are to protect them, but protect the resources. So, that's something that, I wish I could get that across to guides. Most guides I've run across are, if you book them for a couple days, then they're, friendlier, I'll put it that way. But it's like surfing, man. It's like if you surf in the big waves out in California, man, if you're not part of the tribe, like, it's hard to break into. I mean, I guess what I'd say to you is just keep going, and, you'll earn their trust just by being there. And I know you got a 9-to-5 job and all that kind of stuff too, but, they'll see you and they'll remember you and they'll see you. And then, and then you'll sort of, they'll begrudgingly one day, give you the head nod and you'll be in, but that's cool. You go to the Everglades. That's my favorite spot in the entire world.
It's my happy place.
Yeah, me too. Couldn't go this year. Thank you for your question. Anyone else got anything?
Hey, Monty. Jamie Tucker here in Washington, D.C. I saw you are a grad of the high school.
Yes, sir.
My daughter is a freshman at the high school.
Nice.
Brought her home today. I'm going to ask of your different craft, right? So we've talked about fishing. I want to ask about your writing.
Okay.
How did you, as a Episcopal high school grad, find yourself as a reporter and now multiple book author? And is there a high school teacher that helped guide you down that path?
I owe it all to the high school. No, I'm just kidding. But I do owe a lot of it. There was a great teacher there. He just died actually a couple years ago. His name was, we called him Dr. Hannon. I actually don't know if I ever knew his first name, but he was this, great looking dude who he went to the University of Virginia. He went to the high school and then he went to the university. He went right from Episcopal to UVA, and he always wore like bespoke suits and just a cool dude. And he taught us every year. He taught us Gatsby, And that to me was the first, I can still recite lines in Gatsby because of him. And the way he taught Gatsby to me was the first time that I felt like the hair, I'm rising right now when I'm talking about it, the hair go up on my arms about reading and about writing. And I was like, damn, I mean, this is the most powerful thing, that I've come across. It's much more powerful than movies or anything on TV or anything to me. This is the medium that really gets me. And I think, for me anyway, it's the only medium that really gets fishing across in a you can watch all the movies you want about fishing and all that kind of stuff, but they don't really get what it is because so much of it takes place up here. But anyway, I digress a little bit. So yeah, Dr. Hannum certainly put me on that path. I then, as Robin pointed out, I then went to Middlebury, where I had a wayward education, we'll just call it that. And then after graduating from college, I actually applied to business school. And in the same week I got into business school, I had, for just on a wild hair, had gone up to this little Spring Creek in Pennsylvania and written a story about one of the old guys who was there and sent it into a magazine. Same week I got into a business school, I got a letter from that magazine, said, we'd love to publish your 3,000 word story. Here's $200. And I made probably the worst financial decision I've ever made. I told business school to bug off, and I decided to write. But certainly, Episcopal, I really hold Episcopal really dear. I mean, I was there we didn't have girls when I was there, which was it was an odd, looking back, kind of an odd way to go to school. But the place certainly had a huge effect on me, and academically and everything else, spiritually and everything else. It's a really cool place. And happy that you came on. Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you.
There were no girls at Middlebury when you went there? Is that what you said?
At Episcopal.
At Episcopal.
So I went to a boarding school that didn't have, it was all boys. So when I got to Middlebury, that's one of the reasons I had a wayward education. So I got there and I was like, hot damn, let's go,
Can I ask what year you graduated Middlebury?
94.
94, okay.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got a question. You were sort of alluding to this, and you sort of got into it at the end of the book when you talked about the sort of new school guides in fly fishing. And as someone that's sort of just getting into fly fishing, as sort of a COVID hobby and trying to sort of go around it, but it also feels that I've sort of gone down the internet rabbit hole. It seems like this world is expanding rapidly, and more people are getting into it. And as you just said, with the guiding question, it seems to be sort of going in line with surfing and skateboarding, attracting a younger audience that maybe, instead of going with the traditional, whitetail deer hunting, bass fishing group of people and activities. I was just wondering, and then that sort of ties into the early part of the book. You talked about this scene in the Keys. I was wondering why you think fly fishing is so attractive to people that might be more in line with artistic pursuits or surfing or other sort of extreme sports than maybe traditional, anglers, and where this sort of cultural bifurcation, if you even think there is one, comes from.
I can only speak personally about this because I don't know why other people are. And by the way, some of my good friends here in New York are surf fishermen with their big, hardware gear. And they're great anglers. Just great anglers. Lefty Cray was a great, not only a great fly fisherman, he was a great plug caster. But I think what's attracted me to fly fishing is, when I really sit down and think about it, I think it has something to do with the difficulty. Tom McGuane he wrote about this at one point. He said, he said that fly fishing is a lot like the net in tennis. And so, you've created a game, you've purposely made it just a little bit harder. It's harder, a little bit harder to cast. The lines are thinner. It's harder to reel in a fish. And that just intrigued me a little bit. It was the game part of the whole thing. Since then, I've become a total junkie about I love the gear. I think I kind of write this a little bit about the book, but every spring when I go on my first fishing trip of the year after a long winter, I'll rig up my rod. I'll put the reel on the rod, and then I'll put the string through the rod like that and tie the fly on. And I always will see it lying against the car like that, and it just fills me with, I mean, I just look at that and I think about the potential energy within that rod and all the, I geek out about it. I'll put it that way. It's interesting you mentioned the COVID thing, because in speaking to folks at Orvis and other fly fishing places, the boom is unbelievable. And I think it's great. I mean, I'm all for it. I mean, the sport is becoming, I mentioned earlier how tarpon fishing has never been more popular. It's younger, it's hipper. There are more women, there are more people of color. I mean, to me, it's just awesome. This is like the second. There was a big boom after A River Runs Through It came out in 1994. This is the second boom, which I think is going to be a little bit bigger. And I think, with the COVID thing, some people will give it up. I'm sure, some people will try it and they'll be like, whatever. And, once things get back to normal, if they ever do. But I think a lot of people will start on this kind of evolution that I kind of alluded to before, how you start with the freshwater thing, and then you'll start to want your horizons kind of become expanded. One thing that's cool about fly fishing too is you're never perfect at it. So it's always something you can always get better, and you can always, even the best, I've seen the best, Andy Mills, the best tarpon fisherman I've ever laid eyes on. And I've seen him screw up many times. And it's just, it's just like that, but that's the fun, right? I mean, that's the fun, is you can never kind of perfect it. Michael Jordan, I think, once said if he made every basket, he would never play basketball. So it's kind of that same deal. Thank you for asking the question.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes, Rick, I think we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I was just going to make a comment. The young man that was on first, who moved down from Vermont, there is a Mangrove Coast Fly Fishers in Sarasota that meets once a month, and he can get a ton of information from that organization about fly fishing. Helps him with casting. They put seminars on, do all kinds of things. Because I am one of those people that Monty was talking about. I am obsessed with tarpon. I have been since I was 13 years old. I'm now 75. And you don't need a guide. I've never, up here, I live in Bradenton, just north of Sarasota. And I've never had a guide tarpon fishing up here in my life. I have in the Keys, because I'm not as familiar with the water, obviously. But you watch, you read, you mentioned Andy Mill, who is probably maybe the greatest tarpon fly fisherman ever to live, with all due respect to Stu App and to Billy Pate. And his book, if you want to know about fly fishing for tarpon, Andy's book is just absolutely.
Got it right here.
Yeah.
I got it right here.
Yeah, mine's right up above me. I have it too. But as I said, that young man, there's a Mangrove Coast Fly Fishers in Sarasota, meets once a month, and there's a whole bunch of guys, and they get together, do outings, all kinds of good stuff. One thing
I was just gonna say I know of it, and I've been meaning to go and check it out and kind of join some of the groups and the meetups and stuff like that. And I'm shy, and I'm kind of.
Go there, young man.
Okay.
Go there.
I will.
I've been going. I don't go much anymore because I'm getting a little bit older. I'm concerned about this coming year because I just had 4 heart attacks. That they say I'll be okay by the time tarpon season rolls around. I hope, but don't give up. Be very careful when you're around tarpon fishermen, as I'm sure you know. You start getting close to, especially the fly boys, they get really irate if you start motoring in on them. But there's plenty of places in Sarasota, Longboat Key, all the bars, all the way up to Ann Maria. I mean, you can fly fish for tarpon to your little heart's content, and you can catch them. They're there, and just read, go to seminars. There's a lot of seminars around, especially as we lead up to tarpon season. They got Rick Murphy shows up usually somewhere along the line in there. Watch the TV shows, read Andy's book. You'll do great.
Thank you. Yeah, that's my goal this year is to really dedicate myself to doing exactly what you said. So I appreciate that advice. Thank you so much.
And I can't wait to read Monty's book. I know.
Thank you, Rick.
Know a lot of the people in there. Lefty Craig stayed at my house because he used to come down to our fly club, and we would have an event, and I've had him at my house, and I've fished with him.
Very cool.
Flip Pallet called me a fly rod snob one day, which when I see him every once in a while, I still chuckle about that. But I can't wait to read your book. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Rick. I
Enjoyed it,
appreciate it.
But I am obsessed.
Thank you.
I didn't ruin a marriage over it, but we get a lot of harsh words. Fortunately, my wife, she actually liked to tarpon fish, not fly fish, but we'd go to Boca Grande for 2 weeks every year, and she'd go tarpon fishing as long as it was in the
That's
evening
great.
and it was cool. So
That's great. Good.
thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got a question. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes,
can.
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I not technical. Anyway, this is a little off subject, but sticking to the writing from the book, from the forward, a
Yep.
quote from Joy Williams. Now, is there any
Yep.
significance, appreciation of writers, or is it? It's an unusual thing because I know Joy. I know she, I fish, but I can't imagine Joy doing the same. Are you familiar with what I'm talking
Well,
about?
I just loved her. I loved her. I love Joey Williams, first of all. And
Okay.
I was reading through her excellent collection, came out a couple years ago for her short stories. She's one of my favorite writers. I love her.
Okay, good.
Actually, it was Tom McGuane who said, you need to read Joy
Sure.
Williams.
Sure.
And I love this. I'll read it to you. It says, we live and spawn and want. Always there's this ghastly wanting.
I
And
know.
so I thought it fit with this, this obsession thing. It's just like these guys just want, right? They just want. And also there's a little echo there of the spawn, which the fish are spawning and all that kind of stuff too. But it mainly had to do with this, I love this phrase, the ghastly wanting. I love that. So
Well,
I
I
try to,
appreciate that. I appreciate that. I
Good.
appreciate it. I
She's-
just thought
she's
maybe you had
wonderful.
talked her to go out on the water. And I just thought, well, that would be another book.
No.
Well,
Not yet.
I appreciate your book. Thank you very much.
McGuane
okay?
might have. I could ask him.
I know.
Thank
I
you.
know. Well, enjoyed the book and good luck with everything else. Good luck. I enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thank you
Hey,
very much.
I gotta
Thanks
get-
for coming.
I got a good follow up to that. What's next for you? What's next? I mean, do you have any ideas for coming books? I mean, you don't have to spoil them or whatever, but I'm
So
hoping I'm hoping for more fish.
I don't think I'm going to do it. The next one's going to be I was on the trail of a real, how would I describe the guy? A real sort of scam artist thing, but that one may fall through. The lawyers are getting involved, so we'll see. I'll know within the next 2 weeks what's going to happen. But I don't foresee any fishing books anytime soon. I sort of with this one put in all I had. I don't. It's going to take me a little while to refill. I think. I mean, never say never, but it might be a couple years down the road. But it was just so fun. It was a joy to report. It was a joy to write. I just have loved the whole process. So I'm just still loving it.
I loved it too. So thank you for writing it. Yeah.
Well
Thank you.
done.
Thank you all.
Other
Did we
comments,
good?
questions?
I got one question.
Oh.
I got one. I didn't want to let it go, but I was just thinking. I read the book, and you met Tom Evans is such a key character, and you said he sort of inspired the book. But at times when I read it, I couldn't tell if you liked him or not, because sometimes he seemed really grouchy. Sometimes he's getting in this fight with Steve Huff. He's like, seems like. But then again, I was sort of, I just couldn't really tell. So I want to know, did he read the book and what was his reaction to it? And I didn't want to put you on the spot, but what was your sort of overall take of Tom Evans? Because I was a little, I didn't know if I should like him or not after I finished the book.
So I mean, that's good. Like that's not my decision to make for you, right? As the writer, it's like hopefully I tried to do it in a way that the reader can make up his or her mind about Tom Evans. So he is he's like he's really grouchy, irascible, will say stuff that you can't believe that someone would say out loud, that kind of thing. And yet there's this kind of, there's this lovable part when he giggles, for instance. He looks like he's a big fat baby, you know, and so there's this weird endearing thing. I spent a lot of time with Tom. I spent not only time in Vermont for a couple days, but I spent weeks with him down in Homosassa, and Dean Butler and Al DePiric, his two guides. So I spent a lot of time around him, and you know, a lot of people don't like him at all, as you probably know. But a lot of people who have had run-ins with him, like Steve Huff, love him, still love him. They hate him, but they love him. Like, so he's got like this kind of, I don't know, he has this endearing trait in some weird way. So he did read the book. You know, it's very hard. This was a somewhat hard thing to write because so many people in there I got to know Tom, obviously, but I knew Steve. I know Andy. You know, I know Flip. You know, and so it's hard sometimes to write about people that you know and do it fairly, right? Like, so don't be too gentle, but you don't want to piss them off. But I just decided, kind of as a blanket thing, that I was just going to write, you know, what I found, right? So I was going to write about Stu Apt being, you know, as I call him, the Muhammad Ali of tarpon fishing, a guy who brags his ass off, but who backed it all up, right? So like Stu, by the way, didn't really like that part of it, but he admitted that he did do it. So in my conversations with him after the book, but anyway, so yeah, so Tom was, you know, I think he didn't seem, you know, mad about anything like that. You know, he again, it's hard to see. He's all grumpy. Read the book, liked it. You know, that's about all he said. So, you know, I don't know. I especially love that something about that last paragraph in the book. You know, you're not supposed to really fall in love with your own writing, but I love how that scene with Tom, to me, it kind of puts a nice little bow on the whole thing. I mean, it's poignant, it's profane, it's funny, you know, so like it's got this whole, to me, that was kind of like, that was Tom in a nutshell. And that was the book in a nutshell in a weird way. So.
Thanks. Yeah, I really loved how sort of ambiguous all the characters were. You couldn't tell, you know, they were sort of immoral, but sort of lovable. I thought, for me, that was the best part of the entire book. So thank you for telling such a great story.
Thanks. I try to keep my biases and preferences out of that process.
Other comments or questions?
I have lots of questions, but one question I had was, what do you think about pursuing records today? Like, not the way it was back in the early days of Homosassa, but I mean, if you look at the IFGA records that exist today, all of them are from, beside, you know, there's the, what's his name? The Holland, Tom Holland Jr., is that his name? Who caught the 20-pound record. Yeah. So that was
Holland. Holland.
So that was more recent, right? That was kind of early 2000s, but that's kind of sort of I think the most recent tarpon record that's been set, you know, and in the past 2 decades, there hasn't really been any pursuit, which I think is kind of interesting. And I know that there's some conservation there for sure, which I think is great. But I don't necessarily see something wrong with someone taking a tarpon for the purpose of a record if it's just one fish. And I think there are other anglers who have talked about it, but in a way, it's actually sometimes less detrimental than some of the people who go and beat these tarpon up, especially, you know, in certain places. But do you think that this is the pursuit is just gone? Do you think it's fading and it's just going to become a thing of the past? I mean, I know that you have your Meredith McCords and you have your people who actively pursue these records just, you know, for the sport, but I mean, for me, I'm like, damn, I would love to go pursue a record. And I'm kind of surprised that more people aren't trying to break these things, you know?
It's funny because it definitely, I think the record pursuit thing had its heyday kind of like in the 70s and 80s. And then it since then kind of been on a gradual decline. And then come like 2001, 2002, I think it's just fallen off a cliff. Just, you know, especially with tarpon, that you have to kill a tarpon in order to enter it. And I just think that, you know, and there's the unfortunate sort of echoes of, you know, in order to weigh a tarpon, you got to throw it over a tree and hang it with a rope. And so there's like this kind of connotations with lynching that are just kind of icky. So, you know, but there are plenty of people like Meredith McCord who were just out there trying to break record after record after record. There are not many tarpon, you know, Nathaniel Linville in Key West is a young guy who's in his 40s who's trying to break records for tarpon. And then you got Tom Evans, and you got, you know, like 2 other dudes in Homosassa. And that's
Monty?
pretty much it. Yeah.
Monty, one of the other, it's Rick again. Yeah, one of the other things that I throw out there is they're incredibly tough to catch. You can hook a 200-pound tarpon. Hooking him and landing him are 2 completely different things.
You're exactly right. And, you know, those bars are set. I mean, that 12-pound record, 194-pound fish, that's a really high bar, you know. I just don't, there's just not many people who could land something bigger than that on 12-pound test. But
I think that record is unbeatable. I think that 12-pound record is like actually unbeatable right now.
Yeah, that's a cool record. Incredible record.
I've done 145 on a fly, and
Wow, that's great. That's great. My biggest was 140, and it almost killed me, but I loved every second.
Well, it damn near killed me. I got a 182 last year, the year before last, on spinning, and that damn near killed me too. But I'm a lot older than you are, so I'm not into those anymore. 100 pounds, 80 pounds is fine.
By the way, guys, if Robin or Rick or anyone out there has any more questions, you guys can email me if you want. My email is on my website, which is just my name.com.
Awesome.
So just feel free to email me any questions you have, or could, you know, anything. I'd love to
Can't
talk.
wait to read your book. Can't wait to read your book.
Thanks, Rick.
Well, and there's a link in the chat to purchase the book. Any final question for our guest?
Thank you for putting this on.
My pleasure. I love doing these things. I love doing particularly author events on Zoom on subjects that I know so little about. And it's so interesting for me to listen. And I have loved listening to all of you chat, because it's a subject that I know a little bit more about. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Georgia. Thank you, Monty. I mean, I just got to say, finally, like, Monty, your book, it set the hook for me for fishing. I mean, for fly fishing, saltwater fly fishing.
Good.
I mean, since I finished your book, it's like every night before I go to bed, I'm obsessively watching. I've watched every episode of Silver Kings. I've watched, you know, every episode of Rob Fordyce's show. Yeah, I mean, time and time again. You know, it's like I'll wait a week and then I'll restart.
You wait. It's gonna get, come February, it's gonna get worse. So you're down south, so you'll be okay. But February for me, I'm like gnawing at the.
Oh, I can. Chomping at the bit. And to Rick's point, I mean, I think this year is going to be hopefully, you know, the time that I really dig down into tarpon fishing. But I mean, nonfiction books for me is really kind of my flavor of book. So I actually bought 92 in the Shade after reading your book. Yeah. I've been having a hard time getting into it just because I'm not really a novel guy as much, but I still think it's an amazing book. But I mean, your book is really what I think it may have changed my life. So I appreciate you.
Well, I love hearing that. As long as it changes it in a good way.
Well, let's give our guest a hand. Thank you so much. Thank you, Monty.
Thank you, Georgia, so much.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody.
And thank you all for coming.
Tight lines.
Good night.
Night, guys.